Have you ever felt?
Are you listening?
Hello and welcome to the Business of Influence podcast. It's brought to you by Style ID Africa. My name is Leroy Mark, and this is the podcast where we give you the news, the views, the reviews, and the interviews, and everything you need to know about the world of influencer marketing. Talking about influencer marketing, the new trend that's taken the world by storm is podcasts, like this one. We want to find out in South Africa what it's doing for content creation, for commentary, and for Clout, as we have one of the best content creators and podcasters in the studio. His name is Zimasa, and he'll chat to us about how this platform is changing the way content is consumed in South Africa. Let's meet him.
So here's something interesting. I'm hoping you've heard that term before, and hopefully it was for good reasons. My name is Zimasa Vabaza, more commonly known as Mooshtaffa on the socials. It's been like that for a very long time. I'm a socio-economic commentator. I'm somebody who believes in skills development, and I believe that we really need to start exploring things more, and I consider myself a nerdy creator. And I'm here to hopefully have a really great conversation with you guys, one that you'll find interesting, but one that if you don't feel it's going your way, you'll poke holes into. Cheers.
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Business of Influence podcast, brought to you by Style ID Africa. In studio with Zimasa. The conversation or camera is already hot, so I'm worried about this going to happen if this couch won't be alike. I feel like, Zimasa, you and I live in the same house, because I was saying to you offsite that I listened to you 3 or 4 other podcasts, especially because of the political analysis, socioeconomic conversations you have, and because it's also very well researched. Right? But before we get into the kind of content you do, I just want to sort of let's go big. Just, look at generality and then we'll go into particularity. Why are podcasts so popular as a medium?
I think it has to do with formats. When I was growing up, the formats of discussions were always short, 28 minutes, because TV formatting needed to take into account adverts. So conversations were that. Then you had larger styled shows like, let's say, your carte blanches, but those were for a very unique set of people who could pay for that pay TV type of subscription or viewership possibilities. So people didn't really kind of get that. Then you had your cutting edges, but they're focused on issues that were particular for a particular set of audience because it lived on a particular type of channel. So when this thing broke free in the sense of you could actually sit and get a thorough, well-researched, deep dive into a topic that might not have been as mainstream, but might be very niche-ish, but could go mainstream, you suddenly started to find that the people who would be really, really kind of into that topic would then watch really attentively, comment really attentively, and share into their networks. So the network effect really helped podcasting because you'd find podcasts are super niche. You find that you'll listen to somebody that only gives you, let's say, relationship advice from a particular standpoint, not just a generalist on relationships. You'd have a guy who just particularly only speaks on financial relationship advice. Then you'll have a guy who says same financial relationship advice, but from a perspective that is more conservative. And then another one is more liberal, more centrist. So it allowed for the creators to really sprout up and speak on what they knew best. Thus, the content and how it was delivered to people was really authentic and came from somebody who could be a pseudo specialist.
But now there has to be, we have to be real about the fact that yes, now with the ilk of you, the Mark Sharp, Season Paul for Walsh, Jamie, we can continue naming. You guys are giving us content, especially after the elections, right, of 2024, where there was a need for a lot of explanation of what going on. It was the first time where, for instance, the politics were taking a different turn.
Coalitions, JNU.
We didn't know before. One of coalitions, people were looking for information a particular way. But before then, I'd say, before the hype of the election, we were sort of inundated with podcasts around lifestyle issues. We're looking at magazine shows that just seem to have been on YouTube. What what made them move from being these entertainment things where we're coming on chatting about celebrities, gossip, lifestyle, to these very serious commentaries where I can even argue that the new fourth estate is no longer the mainstream media, but platforms on podcasts and broader social media.
So this is how I'm going to answer your question, and I think it's so interesting. So there's a couple of factors. One core factor that jumps up to me is that there's a correlation between the age at which voters become, or voters, eligible voters, become engaged civically in things that are happening around them. And that age is around 30. Now, if you minus maybe like 5 years ago, maybe even to 10 years ago, 2015, 2016, when it was mainly entertainment that was there, you would find that there were credibility issues, and people would only ever go there to understand, to get breaking news. Right? So you're 25, breaking news, it's like whatever, the world around me will kind of keep doing its thing. Fast forward to when it's 2021 and you're maybe 30 now. You're hitting 30, you're 28, 29, 30. You're starting to figure things out more. You now want to jump from maybe rent to bond. You want to jump from, so you want to understand what affects this bond and this interest rate. What's this prime rate? What's this repo rate? Type of thing. You're maybe out of your first car that was maybe bought by your parents. You've got to buy yourself your first car. So your first actual car now. So you got to understand what goes into that. Then they say, hey, there's this thing that happens, and then there's a finance minister who speaks on this thing, and then that thing affects your thing. It's like, whoa, what do you mean? Then there's things around you. You're dealing with things. You're dealing with potholes. You're dealing with maybe robots that don't work. You're dealing with long queues at state-owned enterprises, at departments. You're starting to figure out, hey man, there's a thing that affects how my life is structured, right? You start to think about things like safety, that's whatnot. Then you look for content that's either going to affirm or explain what you are feeling. That content now suddenly did not come from the news. The news gives you the facts, hopefully. They give you the facts. But the opinion-based thing, or the part of the news, only ever lived in written form. It only ever lived on the opinion pages of the Sunday papers, the Friday papers, etc. So what the podcasters did is that they started to take those arguments or the different perspectives of that arguments, and they brought them into a visual space where people wanted to visualize what was going on. Obviously, a lot of this comes from the Western and Northern Hemisphere, who started this quite first. I think of people initially like the Johnny Harrises. I think of Candace Owens more when she was still very righteous. Now she's more centrist. And all of these type of people who broke down major topics. And now you've got the Tucker Carlsons and those type of guys. But what I liked about people like Johnny Harris, and 2020 becomes a core year for me, is that I started to realize, and Vox, I started to realize that I watch this type of content because it is different. It is a different way of presenting the opinion-based part of any breaking story. So there is the story that broke. This is what happened. But what are the aspects and the factors that go into the story? And who can visualize this for me and present it really nicely? So those things happen. But the age thing and also the opinion-based things, those are the core two things. Because as people get older, they want to understand the world around them more, and they're not really buried into their micro clusters. They want to understand what's macro and what's going on. And then also the pattern of how things are presented to us. Those two things clash together. That's why post-2020, a lot of us, Leroy, unfortunately got a little bit older. Yeah. So we started to want those things. So you'll find that even when you break down, you'll see that who watches when and how and where they're watching. Because we were just speaking about this off air, that a lot of viewers are now viewing on traditional television.
Yeah.
Digitally.
I have you, what I've even opened up, that you were in my living room.
Yes.
Your face in my living room, and I sometimes answer back.
Yeah.
So for me, this is, very comfortable, because I'm like, you were at home with me this morning.
Yeah.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, because I think when you start looking at where your consumers are, right?
Yeah.
Let's make the example of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I'm from the age of Harry Potter, and I growl Harry.
Me too.
Right? So the reason why Harry Potter was so popular in my life, and the franchise going forward, was because I grew up with Harry.
Yes.
And Harry was in high school, I was in high school.
Yes.
When he started getting into girls, I was getting 100%, But I want to understand which is interesting, because the rest of social media world works on the idea that I, Leroy, create a community.
Yeah.
I give advice on whatever.
Yeah.
And then brands tap into that. They pay me to include them into my narrative, to deliver them to my audience. Basically, I'm offering them my audience.
100%.
Whereas the podcasting, especially because 2020, become very interesting where you guys are saying things that are very interesting.
Yeah.
That might not be necessarily comfortable for a brand, for instance.
100%.
And so I need to understand, why is podcasting different from the web and influencer marketing? It's like, you guys are not doing, you're not talking like people, like I always say, I can't say that because what if brand X is listening and they want to come on board and tell me, I shouldn't trust them.
So this is the interesting bit. We've got a very, and we've always had a very, I would say, conservative media landscape in South Africa. So that's why when you find people that were shock jocks, like kind of early, you'll think of, in my generation, it was a Gareth Cliff who kind of moved the needle a lot. I mean, some of the stuff he was saying was like, whoa, he's even allowed to say that. But he was allowed to say that. But think of it from a platform perspective. The problem that exists in South African media currently, and those that own it, that own the platforms, and those that buy on the platforms, ultimately the custodians of these brands that then stimulate this industry, is that they're hyper conservative, because in South Africa you can't talk about sex, religion, and politics, and money in a particular way. So what happened is that those started to become very much secluded to certain types of people in a particular space. So editors ran what we saw, right, initially. Now, as things go, you start to realize that, hey man, even if an expose or a story lives on a particular news platform, a big bank will still go and buy because they want the audience. Now, where we are is that we've moved fast and advertisers have moved slower, because they still think that we are traditional in nature, but they think we are personalities, not platforms. They think that I am on a traditional platform and I speak because somebody edited this thing for me, and they can not associate with me in this way. When in essence, what they should be saying is, there is an active audience that speaks to this gentleman. A lot of his claims can be verified and come from reputable links and sources. Thus, his platform is just like any tell-all, right? Because there's no difference between, well, maybe there is. There's a difference between myself and, for instance, a Dr. JJ Taban, right? But funny enough, he's got a YouTube platform now. So you start to understand that the lines were always blurry, right? But advertisers, the people that actually make the till ring in order for you to continue creating this type of content, they themselves are so hyper conservative and they are picking the winners. Thus, a lot of people that create content think about, what will a client think of this type of content? Yes, but even existing clients, right? People that give you repeat business. I've had this a lot of times. There's stories that I've put out there and I will get a call from a client that says, this. And I'm like, what? And then I say to them, what's wrong with it? Right? Because it's only when you ask people that you really find out that the same brands are actually run by people, and it's people who felt uncomfortable and not the brand, not the brand. Okay. So I've had issues with clients where I say, let's get on a call and unpack this. And then when I unpack it, they go, yeah, but the audience, and I say, go look at the comments. I always leave all of my comments. The only thing I delete are those stupid Forex people and those crypto and their crypto stuff. But the rest of the comment, if I don't care if your comment is terrible, as long as it goes within community guidelines for it to still exist on that platform, I'm okay with it being up, because I want alternative views to find expression in the comments. And I say to clients, go into my comments and tell me what is wrong with what people are saying and how they're receiving it.
I think also because brands are not used to having that very frank response to a piece of content.
Yes.
And brands like to, as you say, guidelines, even from a brand point of view, when brands are briefing anyone, they say, let's stay away from the
shock people.
Yeah, let's not talk about race, religion, but let's keep it within this confines. And that's why I think, the social media influencing still has a very vanilla-ness about it.
Yeah.
That sometimes that we see where audiences go, the ball looks the same.
And just to add to what you're saying, I've had very interesting conversations with someone like a Pinwell, right? Around how do we commercialize the platform that you've created. Now, the issue with a platform like that, and I don't know why, because I charge for this stuff. I'm gonna say the problem with and that's what I get, I guess, when we do have conversations with Pinwell. I always say to him, we've got to find brands that are willing to understand and accept this type of content without them feeling like it's a personal attack on people, but rather very visceral platforms for communication in South Africa. Very different. And you find that someone like him will then appeal to betting clients, more risque clients, etc. And I've always said, look, certain conversations need that type of aggression, but certain conversations need a different type of conversation. And I think it's become too personality based rather than platform based. And this is my cry and my plea, because someone like a Penel has various types of platforms. He's got the Convo platform. He's got the Conversations with Penwell the Penwell show. He's got various platforms that allow for brands to interact with audiences. So they're judging him based off who he is, not of what you can get from the audience. And as brand custodians, you guys need to actually consider how you're buying space in this new age.
Especially because the platforms are so varied.
Yes.
We'll come back still more with Zimasa. This conversation is, the cards are fire. The card. Welcome back to the Business Influence Podcast. Still with me, Leroy Mark. Still in studio with Zimasa. He is here to teach us a lot about the world of podcasting, but also to challenge a few views that we've held. So, like, comment, subscribe, send out to the timeline. Let's have a conversation about why podcasting is the new fourth estate. Talking about that, Zimasa, I think what I'm appreciating is that we have been looking at podcasting completely the wrong way. We think it's an extension of the normal traditional social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and the conversations happening there. Chat to me about how, commentary is such an interesting thing, especially when you have so many moving parts in South Africa. And it seems that we're looking for someone to almost unpack it for us, and podcasts have seemed to be the place to be. And it seems that mainstream media consumers are now going to podcasts because you're able to get a deputy president to go onto a podcast and he's going to be asked the real questions. What is traditional media not seeing about the value of podcasts?
I think what they're not seeing is that they've built a business model that then feeds into a formatting model that has a particular output. But the output now is changing because the I call it the fifth estate, right? And the fifth estate, what we do is that we go where they won't go, one, but two, we want our content to live long term. Whereas for them, our platforms that we are natively on act as a storage for them rather than it being a thing that's a means to an end. Whereas for us, we create content that is meant to be engaging. We purposefully ask for commentary on stories because we want to engage with you afterwards, because we want to unpack this further. So their entire business model, right, from pay TV or state broadcaster down to the content, down to the editorial, right, down to the producers, down to the interview, down to where we place it afterwards. Their thing is like, hey man, if you didn't watch it live, it's dead. And even if 500,000 people watch it post this as a news platform online, it's like it's whatever for us. Whereas for us, we are online first. So I will incorporate things that say, like what you've just in terms of your intro link in, as well as your link back in. You say, hey guys, comment, like, do this, that. You are actively asking for engagement. So people, this is the language that people understand now. That when somebody is kind of giving me an opinion, they can say, I don't know. Because no one is all knowing. Right? And that vulnerability and that asking us to build an opinion around this thing together as an audience creates a creates almost like a bond that traditional can't recreate because of how their editors are, the producers are, the editorial policy is, the platform is, the group body is, or the group company is.
Yeah.
So that starts to affect the output. Whereas we've started with the platform in mind first, the stories that we create from an opinion-based perspective, particularly for me. I want you to be able to go to last year's story that I did on Elon Musk and Starlink and still it be relevant to give you a perspective on what's happening today.
Yeah.
And that's what I found. That's why a story like that, for me as an example, it went from initially maybe to 80,000 viewers, then it went dead for a bit. Then Elon started to do like funky shit to SA.
It went right back up.
I think it's crossed 200,000 views now. So that just shows you how non-time specific the content that I personally create is. Because, like, for instance, you find that somebody like, again, I'll say somebody like a Mighty Jamie, he's instant. He wants to dissect now. Yes, the dissection.
Yeah.
Right? So he is basically saying, I'll give you a different perspective from what the other guys are doing.
Yeah.
Then you have a Caesar who sits down and goes in depth with somebody who was part of the story.
Yeah.
So you were part of the story.
Yeah.
So now tell us, let's go in depth into this thing. Whereas I say, what does this story mean relative to everything else and the spider web that is South Africa that we understand? So for instance, you'll see that a lot of people are asking me, give us the Mkhwanazi thing, give us the Mkhwanazi thing. And I was like, if I was to unpack the Mkhwanazi story, which I am, I'm kind of giving you my research notes now.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do the Mkhwanazi story, I need to then give you perspective on the stats around political and taxi violence and killings in KZN first.
Yeah.
Then I need to go and explain to you what the different professional police officers do. What is STF? What is NIU? What is a TRT, Amaperete? What is a flying squad?
It's important.
What is a
Just to interject, which is really important because what we find with traditional media platforms now, radio, because for me radio is the other more comfortable medium
of expression.
Yeah, in that, it's in your car. We can have, especially the guys who do like the 9 to 12 slot race, a bit more relaxed. We have an hour to have a guest on
3 hours.
that they forget that we need a lot of context to energies. The people who are coming in and listening to you are expecting you by the time you get to the story, I'm now very comfortable. That's why I said to you, as you walk in, do you want my analysis? I've watched all 3 of the podcasts.
Yes.
And it's taken me to where I need to be.
100%. And then you're able to then say, what makes Mkhwanazi different? So when I build a story, I want you to be able to watch, no matter what happens with the Mkhwanazi thing, I want you to be able to watch it a year later and say, Konje, what happened with Mkhwanazi? What I do is opinion archiving.
Okay.
So this is what we don't do well in South Africa. So I looked at, go back to 1992. I believe it was the Chris Hani assassination.
Yeah.
I think it's around circa that time. 92, 93. I stand to be corrected. In our media, I say, correct me in the comments. Like, I'll be mad at Hano, and I'm going to be mad.
Yeah.
So around that time, there was a particular sort of way that a 702 covered that particular story. So they have the interviews of Ntate Tokyo Sehwale, who's there on the scene, right? And he's in a tracksuit, and you can see this guy just, but hey, something's happened to Chris, and it just. So they broadcasted it like that so that it would be packageable for an international audience.
Absolutely.
We just happen to have it.
Yeah.
So I'm saying to you, right now there's a zeitgeist, there's a feeling around KZN, policing, General Nkatlam Kwanazi, and everything that's going on. I want to archive a different perspective on the opinion around this that has context, that a younger South African 20 years from now, one was born today, can say what happened with policing in South Africa, whether it went up or down past this point, what happened? And then I can say to you, then you can go back 20 years ago and go through the archives and find a clip, a video that is 20 to 25 minutes that was done by Zimasa, and it gives your perspective, not just breaking news perspective and formatting.
I think what we haven't realized about the complexity of podcasting, because it really is a different animal.
Yes.
I'm finding it to be, whenever I sit back and I look, and we work in the world of influencer marketing, so
Yeah.
I'm consuming this thing 24/7, at least 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
At work, right? That podcasting for me, and why this conversation is so important, is because it seems to be sui generis, like a thing on its own category, but it impacts so many people. And I'm interested in how this podcasting thing, especially when it's become formalized,
Yeah.
right? What I mean by that is you just run through how you have your process notes.
Yeah.
You have a strategy,
Yeah.
right? Whether you sat back and drafted it per year, per month, per quarter, whatever it is, and all the other platforms that we speak about, especially from a social commentary point of view, it's very set out. Even the people who you bring in is set out.
You're
right. I'm interested in that there's a particular formalization of podcast that requires people like Suitable for Walsh, who's a doctor from Oxford,
Yeah.
right? Who is not just the guy who's sharing an opinion there's who maybe or whatever. That people are now starting to use that as a place for them to find not necessarily an opinion, but we're using podcasts now to try and formulate our own opinion.
100%.
And how we're becoming the voices that say, I do it this way.
Yeah.
But you and Penrell, for instance, aren't fighting.
Yeah.
In fact, complementary. I've often seen where if I go through 4 or 5 podcasts of, you guys mention each other, and there's a proper ecosystem there.
We've built a super platform. That's what I said on Caesar's thing. Sorry to interject. That's what I said to Caesar. I said, we are a platform.
Yeah.
We are a platform. I don't mind, and the data tells me this. It says someone will go from my content and go to Caesar, and then from Caesar will go to Penwell, and then we'll jump to a podcast and chill, and then we'll come back to me, and there's a clear path that the consumer and the viewer now takes through our content around a particular topic or complementary and related topics.
Yeah. But you've been able to self-regulate, right? Because, as you say, you guys are a super platform because you have similar values, if not similar views on how to put together content for us to, the opinions might be different. Chat to me then about how, we regulate the space, because there's lots of conversation right now around regulating the podcasting space.
And even influencers.
And influencers too. And part of the reason why we even have this podcast is because we're trying to benchmark. We're trying to say, okay, here's industry-based practice. We're bringing you conversations where we can look back and say, Zimasa said something very interesting, actually. Let me go back there.
And you can use it as a source, by the way.
As a source, yeah, because we don't have enough information around, like, what does it mean to be a social media influencer in beauty?
Yeah.
What's the kind of issues that we're dealing with? There's a conversation we had with in another episode.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in where mainstream media is right now. It's sitting in a place where it's saying, okay, we need to tap into what's happening there, right?
Yeah.
But mainstream media is hamstrung because it has ICASA. It has, the Independent Communications Authority says, no, you can't speak about this particular things. You can't offend in this particular way.
Yeah.
But podcasting, and we know there's been lots of conversations around them being regulated, because some conversations you go, but Magena, you guys went too far.
Yes.
But now, how do we then balance that? Because even in social media, apart from the guidelines from each platform, because each platform will say to you, don't say the S word, the F word, the P word, or whatever. But you guys have got the ethics.
Yeah.
What about the industry at large? Does that not kill the industry? Does it make it better? Where does the regulation come in, if there is regulation to be had?
Super interesting. I think in our space, the viewers vote with their views.
Okay.
And I say this. Sometimes we take things too literally.
Okay.
Yes, things can be offensive, and there is a market for offensive content in South Africa, just like anywhere else in the world. What we need to understand is that there are super governing laws in this country that then dictate how we interact with each other.
Yes.
That then take into account the platforms that you say things on, etc., and we've got the legalese to go about it. What we can't do is start to regulate conversations amongst people, even if they have megaphones. If you feel aggrieved by conversations, you can there are ways that you can kind of go about this. What we risk, right? Everything will formalize, but what we risk by overregulation is, will the same regulations account for the viewerships that I have or will have, And will they then take that into account to say, if you register for this thing, you will then get this? Because there's no carrot to regulation. There's only a stick to say, if you say this particular thing, this will happen, that will happen, that will happen, right? But there's no carrot. Even with people like myself who dabble into the space of financial conversations.
Yeah.
The FSCA has just come out with what they say they're going to come out with guidelines that are going to say what people can say and can't say around financial advice.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But then you've got to ask yourself, every financial conversation that happens in South Africa on social media is going to need to go through them?
Yeah.
So let's say I do say, okay, yeah, I want to register as a financial creator. Then I've got to go through a course and whatever. What's on the other side of that?
Yeah.
Is that a form of gatekeeping? Remember, there was open up the industry.
Yeah.
Are you coming onto a platform that you A, don't own, B, don't control, C, you didn't fund me? Then you're saying to me, you don't give me spectrum. I want you to understand this.
Yeah.
You don't give me spectrum. I get it from my ISP.
Yeah.
Are you then going to say to ISPs, you can't? Is that constitutionally okay?
Well, I think because of the opt-in,
Yeah.
right? So unlike a public broadcaster where I have commissioning editors
Yeah.
who go out
PCPSA.
yeah, and remember that when I opt into your platform, I'm opting in. I'm the one
You don't have
fun
to watch.
Yeah, I can actually block you.
Yeah.
I can do the opposite where I don't even have you coming up on my For You page. I can block you so I never see you again.
100%.
But because I opt in, then I know whatever comes on the other side.
I like
is such.
I appreciate.
So yeah, I think that's one of the ways. But I'm also interested in how we, in the same way that once we opt in,
Yeah.
and whatever the currency is, right, and we'll talk about how monetization works.
Well,
I'm very interested about the money, where you say, okay, so I'm opting in,
Yeah.
and a lot of what
The views that there's
So,
the chat that's there. Yeah, I'm willing to take it in because I understand the platform for what it is.
and the legal field where I come from, we have the Fidelity Fund, right?
Yeah.
Where I must pay every year a particular amount of money that if I give you the wrong information, you don't sue me, you sue them on my behalf.
Yes.
So it's like insurance.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe then we start, and this is maybe the question we need to ask, is the ecosystem ready for us to have podcasting being what it is as a content creation platform where it can, as a broader industry, almost build into it these little niches, right? Like insurance
Safeguards and all of
safeguards. Yeah.
So it's possible, but then remember that a lot of the shocking content that a lot of people ultimately get and or receive comes from the fact that people are playing the algorithm.
Okay.
So are we going to then say that the algorithm doesn't incentivize shock content so that when my episode starts, the trailer for the episode, that when it starts, it says, Mang Mang did this.
Yeah.
And you go, you understand? The algorithm is saying, in the first 10 seconds of a YouTube thing, first 30 seconds, what is your drop-off rate?
Yeah.
What is the amount of people that go, this conversation is not enough for me, I'm moving off, versus those who stay? And you are incentivized to always keep up your people throughout the episode, right? That's what the algorithm tells you.
Yeah.
So you could say then, in a way, the platform itself that I present my content on has then informed me of how to format my content so as to keep people on so that we both win.
Yeah.
Myself as well as YouTube.
Yeah.
So therefore, the incentive to create said content comes from the platform that I place it on. And should you not then talk to the platform in itself?
Yeah.
But then the government's not going to be able to sue Google.
Well, also the government is not agile enough for it to deal. And this, I think, what is the bigger conversation is that podcasting has done something that, from a regulatory point of view, and these are moving very fast, is moving exponentially to a point where. And podcasting was still nice to have, right?
Yeah.
It was a nice way to, as you said, archive a conversation I had on radio at 12 o'clock. I can listen to it later. But now we're sitting here where it's primary. It's primary. In fact, I'm looking, there's the 2 podcasts that release on a daily basis that I listen to. And it's an American one. And I'm annoyed because of the time frame. Yeah. Right? I can only have my breakfast podcast at 7 p.m. when I come home.
Yeah.
Chat to me about the monetization, because it is very interesting. Because opinions are only valid if they don't stand in the way of paying your bills, right? So I can get onto your podcast. Yeah, you are proudly sponsored by Brand A.
Yeah.
We don't even talk about that because I can't come on board there and say, actually, all brands like this are absolutely rap. I hate it.
Yeah.
They are word.
Yeah.
Um, is the monetization model on the platform such that you're able to continue to have open conversation because the money doesn't need to come from the brands themselves, but more the platform?
I like this question because it's something that in the background, and this is kind of one of the first times I've spoken about it, where I challenge brands.
Yeah.
There's a lot of financial services brands that I work with, do work with. There's a lot of banking brands, particularly that I do work with. And I'll give you an example of just them. They will literally call me up and say, we'd love to do a campaign with you. And I say, okay, cool, that's fine. Then they say to me, but have you worked with any other FSPs, financial services, for years? And I go, yeah, that's why you came to me. Like, you want the same thing from my audience.
Yeah.
But do you then say, station A, I'm not going to advertise with you because you played bank B's thing,
Yeah.
or bank C's thing,
Yeah.
or bank F's thing?
Mhm.
No, you don't.
That's right, exactly.
You place the thing and then you prepare the proposition based off what it is.
Yeah.
What we do get into is the granularity of saying, we need a cool off period between me going with bank A and FSPB, saying, I can't give retail advice here and retail advice there, or insurance advice here and insurance advice there. But I can't go motoring advice, automotive products here, and value added services here. I can't do online banking here and corporate investment banking here. I can do CSI here for this FSP and do a deep dive like what I did with one of the seaters on behalf of a thing, and do a presentation where I do a 40-minute conversation and a Q&A, but I talk to a particular banking sector through a seater. So all of these things, it's like, oh, okay. So like, no, I work constantly.
Yeah.
Now, this is where it gets tricky. Then I say, are you going to buy me out at the current rate in order for you to buy out my garden leave so that I don't take any other things?
Yeah.
Because if I say to you, no, this thing is 80,000 rand, right? For you to buy me out for this campaign. Then I say to you, no, but you for the next 3 months you're on. Say, okay, Shaq, also need 240 for those. So that I don't take anything else that your campaign thing is. And you say no, then you can't. But we can negotiate and say, well, take it to 100, and then in this category of FSP, I won't say anything else for 3 months.
Yeah.
Then we're doing value added stuff in terms of the monetization.
But you see, this is interesting because the brands are, I don't think, at that point yet, because the traditional influencer marketing model is that we get brief with a budget.
Yeah.
We might even get to a point where we argue about it, where
Yeah.
we decide and negotiate between ourselves.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the brand has the power to dictate how this all works.
Yeah.
I think what is very interesting about podcasting is that the one platform where the podcasters, as much as you say that it's more about the platform and not the personality, are able to say this platform is worth X amount and you take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Because, as you say, podcasting, I think what makes it even more difficult, it's a hybrid of sorts, where it has a lot of the elements of traditional media, radio and television,
Formatting,
formatting, presentation,
intros, outros. Yeah.
and even the money
Yeah.
comes in certain ways. For instance, you're placing an ad, whether it's on the platform, you
Indirect,
whether it's product placement.
Is it a live read? Is it
Yeah, absolutely. But there's also things where the negotiation is not like a traditional influencer marketing contract, where
because they want to be on your platform
absolutely
for X amount. Don't take the post down.
Yeah.
Can you allow us to boost the post over 90 days? And you say no, but the campaign is only 2 months.
Yeah.
So do you let me get a digital usage rate for that extra month? So there is, you're 100% correct.
And I think what you've brought to the fore for me is the fact that, in the same way then that we can extrapolate from traditional media some good practice in there. As you say, I listen to radio, and in an hour you'll hear FSP1, FSP2, FSP3,
Bank 1, retailer 1, retailer 2.
to the point, even in the
Same show 1, yes.
in the same show, you have a segment proudly sponsored by Zimasa FSP1.
Yeah.
And then 20 minutes later, there's another kids quiz.
Yes.
That's probably brought to you by Leo Bank.
Same show.
In the same hour of the same show. So it's really the interesting hybrid of
They need to stop being weird. I genuinely feel like we need to have an advertising symposium where we all come in, traditional media, as well as the new media, and we need to be in one space, and we need to say we need to draft a way forward, because you people in South Africa that are custodians of brands, as well as the culprits in the middle, the intermediaries, and I run a communications agency, but I strive to at least be representative of what the client has said to me. This is the strat, bro. This is what we've got to get right. Then I say, I'm not going to present this type of budget to these type of people. You need to go back and say, I can't afford, or I'm only going to take 2, not 6 of these people. Then they go, okay, because I don't want to demean your platform by coming to you and say, Leroy, brand A is offering 50,000, but they want 17 million posts. And I say, no. I wouldn't take that. And this is the difference, because for my communications agency, I say, client, I wouldn't take this. And I'm not going to offer it to Leroy. Because it's going to be a spit on the work that he does. The least we could do is to offer 80,000 Rand, decrease the post to a reasonable number, offer that, but then have a buffer based off what he can give us added value. Thus, we can swap his added value for more usage of the content. Because the other thing that's not happened on social media, as well as sort of like the creator economy, is that brands are very stuck on what they think they can do, and they haven't brought over the understanding from traditional was quite different, in the sense that we would say we're doing a campaign with Leroy. Leroy, come in, we're going to pay you for performance, we're going to pay you for your name, face at the time. Now it's name, face, voice, likeness, but we're going to pay you for that. And then we're going to pay you a fee for usage over the time, and that's it.
And the usage is complicated because it's platform and duration.
They don't want to pay for usage on digital, but they want to keep boosting. So they're gonna. So you know what you should do as an influencer, as a creator now. You're mad at me. Give them a verification boosting code that allows 30 days, and you renew every 30 days.
And every time
You know you're going for 90 days, but you are renewing so that you know on the third time, even if you forget, they're not liable to get 120.
Yes. Then it's come back to me.
So if they come back to you, they say, hey, that content, can we post? They say,
No longer.
because at the end of the day, I said this to a client. I said, are you aware that the audience that I had 90 days ago or 120 days ago is now different, and I've grown? So you are getting extra people that have come onto my platform for none of the extra work.
Yes. For a fraction of zero.
You just want to boost again. I'm saying, Chief, take into consideration, I was at 50,000 followers. I'm now at 63,000 followers. There's 13,000 new people here who I've worked to bring onto this platform that you're getting almost for nothing. We need to find middle ground.
We can find middle ground, and I think the middle ground is shifting quickly, because brands and content creators are really coming to the table well jacked, because we listen to podcasts like Zimasa's. More after this. Whew. Welcome back to the tail end of our conversation with Zimasa. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell your friends you're on the timeline, because we're talking about the business of influence. Zimasa,
Yes.
I think next time we need to have a symposium.
Yes.
With a invited guests. And we're going to be quiet about it. And because I think there's so much that your work and what you do has opened up for me from an understanding of podcasts. I really think this conversation is going to be so instrumental. And I know we've had some off the record conversation. And one day it'll be on the record. But I think there's a lot going on there. And I'm so glad it's championed by people like you, the likes of Caesar, the likes of Penwell, whether they like him or not. Because you guys you're shaking it, man. You guys are making podcasting become so incredibly as a new force, I think. I think you call it the fitness state. And I like that, because it means that you're now part of
There's a podcast coming.
there's a podcast coming. But I'm really glad that we're having the conversation, because I think there's so much there, and I think please avail yourself for part 2.
Let's have a conversation. So, one of the core things that we've got to realize is that we're not fighting for ad dollars in the way that we think we are. What we're really doing is that we're creating a truly fact-based, source-based, alternative, opinion-based platform that South Africans can come onto, and whether they come to me, they go to Caesar, they go to Mighty Jamie, they go to Penwell, wherever they go, they know that they will be getting something that is credible, something that can be fact-checked, or they want a different opinion, or they want to know that person's opinion of this, because they always have a particular slant. All of these things are core and fundamental to us having open, free, and fair discussions around anything that happens in this country.
I think it's an embodiment of democracy. Yeah, it's like we're able to have these conversations. Do you think traditional media is on its way out? Do you think it's in ICU and it's time to?
Breaking news is on ICU.
Yeah.
Breaking news, and this is what they do. Unfortunately, is breaking news. Breaking news on ICU. A large part of it will become distributed.
Yeah.
One, you're still going to find that people will be able to connect to stations and kind of give on the ground accounts as they happen. That'll still be needed. But the breaking news element and the visualizations, I think, will go to AI almost immediately. Opinion is where the new fight is going to be.
Oh, okay.
It's whether or not people want AI to tell them or other people to tell them, right? It's going to be really core.
Yeah.
Because a story breaks. The story is a story is a story. The press conference was the press conference was a press conference. We can't change that.
Yeah.
But what we can change, and it was scraped live. So it's live. AI goes, scrapes the transcript of the thing, gives you a thing, finds reference pictures, checks that these are fine. Person who's editing or even another AI says, yeah, this is cool, presses enter, the thing goes out, it's almost immediate.
Yeah.
This is 2 minutes, a minute after the press conference is done, and it'll give you different types of sentiment. But what is core is going to be who unpacks that thing and what conversations happen after that thing has happened.
Yeah.
That's where news always was, by the way, because the thing was the thing was the thing. But now there is extra burden on organizations, news organizations, to then try to be creators themselves.
Yeah.
Which they are failing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these journals, and I said to a friend of mine one time, you may never see me on a traditional platform delivering anything that will be edited by news editors.
Yeah.
I will not be edited by, and I refuse to be edited by, somebody who was a junior journalist in 1989 for City Press. Because they have a different view on the world.
And it's not what I'm trying to say about that.
Yeah. You don't even understand the platforms, right? So there's a lot of what we need to unlearn, but there's a new skill set that needs to be learned, and people will vote with their views. So I can't predict it, but I'm telling you just that breaking news will be owned by AI because the speed at which they'll be able to get things out will live with AI. The longer term conversations of what happens post that thing will live with people for as long as other people want to watch other people and not AI.
Final question. What has podcasting and your platform taught you about impact and influence in South Africa?
That there is and are people that want to still engage knowledgeably.
Yeah.
That's why I have never, and you can fact check me on this, I have never, ever, ever, ever asked people to subscribe to my channel.
Yeah.
And I never will. But what I always ask you in every single thing, let's chat in the comments. Let's chat in the comments. Let's engage in the comments. Because that engagement, if you go look at any of the ratio of engagements, of comments and engagement on any of my posts, you start to realize that they get more engagement than people that get 2-3 times the type of views that I get. So if my video hits a 50,000, people that have 150 to 200,000, they don't get as much comments as I do. Because my stuff is meant to be comment worthy. And I want to create a space where people can find answers amongst the group.
Yeah.
It is like now, people that have been with me for like 2.5 to almost 3 years, they've even banned it to say, that's not already said, or that's not already meant. No, you actually just a bot. And they tag me, they're like, Zim, can you please delete this comment? This one, that's why I know. It's not like they're just here to troll.
Yeah.
So we've really crafted a space where the community feels ownership and they want to conversate.
And I think brands will understand that for you to dial into that conversation, and I'm going to use the A word I hate, you have to be authentic.
Yes.
You have to come in and understand where you're working out. I think the podcasting space, I think, is the safe space because the people who are there are very passionate about information.
Yeah.
I think whether it's a podcast around, pop culture, fun, frivolous things, it serves the purpose. And I think what we're doing now is we're seeing more and more voices, and the ones who are coming in now, flash, floods, or flash fresh, are going to disappear. And the ecosystem is seemingly regulating itself. And that's why I think I'm very excited about the podcasting, in particular as part of the social media, because it's actively crafting itself at a rate that's more than any other platform to be able to exclude the bots and the bad sentiments and keep a very deliberate conversation.
And factual.
And absolutely factual.
Yeah.
So I must thank you for your time. I must thank you for your candor, your enthusiasm, your energy. You've got me thinking about 110 different things.
Yeah.
And I want to see the conversations that come from this, because you've really sparked a huge. I've been looking forward to this conversation because in the podcast, we want to also figure out what are we doing.
Yeah.
We've got a strategy, we've got an idea in mind, but it's so great to speak to someone who's been doing this for a while.
Behind the podcast, what's into it?
Yeah, and you've done this for so long that, as I say to you in my living room often, and I sit down and I constantly think how my world is being framed by opinions I'm hearing on these platforms. So I must thank you for just being, a repository of information and enthusiasm.
It's a pleasure. I think what's core is for people to then engage with this type of knowledge-based content.
Yeah.
And then go and read.
Yeah.
Like, and what's core about this is that's the other thing. Like, everything filters down, guys. Like, we've got to now capture the zeitgeist, the feeling of this time, and document it so that we're not in 20 years saying, Africans need to write and tell their own stories. We will already have done that.
Yeah.
We need more authors. We need more people creating fact-based, knowledge-based, nerdy content that looks at the most strangest things, like how Santon was built and the money behind it, right? So that you understand how the world around you was shaped by people that decided that this is a good place to invest in. What we do is we tell stories of the now. But in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it'll be stories of a time.
Yeah.
And we need to capture the feeling of this time.
The zeitgeist.
The zeitgeist.
With that, it's goodbye from us. Capture the zeitgeist. For me, I love that we're making sure there's no recolonization of information.
Yes.
That information remains free and available. And I think this podcast is very clear about also trying to make the business influence make sense. And we're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
And bring me on board. Guys, the conversation is big. In the words of Zimasa, let's engage with the comments. Until then, I'll see you next time. Cheers.
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.